Good evening, good night, good afternoon. Wherever you're listening from, I always say that. And you're watching, listening to Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. I am Dr. Canute White. I have a very exciting guest tonight, as I said, wherever you're listening, whenever. And he's going to be talking to us about a number of things. He's a very experienced person as it relates to his expertise. He has a lot to share with us. And here on Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast, I'm going to be talking to Mr. Marshall, Jim Marshall, today. But Jim, how are you doing, sir?
What's that?
How are you doing, Jim?
Fine. How are you, Doctor?
I'm good, Jim. Marshall, do you follow crickets?
No.
You don't? Okay. No. Marshall is a very, very popular name in West Indian cricket, but that's all right. I like the name. Very, not unique, but very important name. A number of very important persons with that name, and I'm sure that Jim is one of those important persons who will talk to us. But Jim, who is Jim? Talk to us about who you are, first of all.
Okay, well, I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people.
We're not hearing you clearly, Jim. Can you speak up a bit, please?
Okay. I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown human phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people.
Oh.
Am the inventor of a corresponding practical philosophic system called Septemics, and am the author of the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. This book would dramatically improve the life of anyone who takes advantage of it. If you'd like to find out about Septemics, go to septemics.com. That's SEPTEMICS, Septemics.
Okay.
As for my qualifications, I am a polymathic intellectual whose areas of expertise include psychology, philosophy, theology, parapsychology, science, engineering, mathematics, law, literature, history, metaphysics, military science, political science, physical culture, education, and music. And I hold a Bachelor of Science cum laude from City University of New York.
Oh, interesting, Jim. I love that. But I want to ask you something that I ask all my guests. You might have realized about your childhood. Who were you back then, little Marshall, at 10, at 7, at 12 years old?
Okay. Well, in retrospect, I was a born polymath. I have no memory of a time when I was not intensely interested in learning anything that's taught in any university. And of course, I didn't even know the word polymath, and I didn't really know that I was different from people. But as the years went by, it started to becoming clear. For example, by the time I was about 13 or 14, I had separate groups of friends.
Yeah.
I had one group of friends with whom I would attend physics and mathematics lectures. I had another group of friends with whom I would attend plays and poetry readings. I had another group of friends with whom I would play football and baseball. These three groups of people, of course, there were more groups than that, but as an example, they did not like one another, but I liked them all. So even then, I was interested in really anything that could be considered serious learning.
Yeah.
And so that kind of affected my personality and my life. I was shocked at the age of 10 to find out that some kids didn't like school. That was really news to me. I loved school, and I still love learning. By the time I had my bachelor's degree, I knew really well how to learn, how to study. And that carried me through the rest of my life and helped me to master many subjects.
Okay, interesting. You have a very interesting childhood, Jim. But what is this polymathic intelligence? What's that about?
Okay, a polymath is someone who is learned in a variety of diverse subjects, which certainly describes me. Actually, I didn't think of myself as a polymath until just a few years ago, and I suddenly realized that that's what I was. Although I was always a scholarly person who wanted to learn and was studying all kinds of things throughout my life, both in formal education and just on myself. Before I thought of myself as a polymathic scholar, now I think of myself more as a polymathic intellectual because I'm less of a scholar now and more of an intellectual at this point in my life.
Oh, cool. So you're versed in several disciplines, right?
Many disciplines,
Many
yes.
disciplines.
Couple dozen.
Interesting. Not many of you are around, Marshall. Not many of you are around because for me, I have my studies in psychology, organizational behavior, and so forth, right?
Right,
Education. But
right.
I love to be able to understand things like biology as an expert and so on. So you are saying that many of these disciplines you're very versed as it relates to the
Yes,
information and
yes,
practice of it.
yes.
Okay.
And that led me eventually to discovering Septemics,
Okay.
because only a polymath could have discovered it, because it's so broad that only a person who knows a lot about many subjects would have seen what it is, would have
Yeah.
recognized it.
Yeah. Interesting, Marshall. Um, so we talk about devoted to over 50,000 hours of study. I read this somewhere, and
Yes,
practice of multiple dimensions of human potentials and development. Talk
yes.
to us about that.
Well, by the time I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I was aware that although I was an engineer, I did not really want to engineer electrons or airfoils or gears or motors. I wanted to engineer the human psyche.
Okay.
So eventually I became a human development engineer, and I had a long career treating hundreds of people as human development engineer. So I
Right.
was doing engineering, but I was doing it basically on the human mind. Uh, and as I was doing that, I started observing the types of things that an engineer would observe. I started observing that my clients were improving in a predictable way. And I never told that to anybody, but I wrote it down.
Yeah.
In other words, they were moving up scales. So I found that I could predict the outcome of a session before it happened, even though nobody knew that but
Yeah.
myself. So these scales presented themselves to me empirically. And by the mid 90s, I had about 32 scales of varying lengths. Only two of them had 7 levels. The rest of them had various other numbers.
Yeah.
Now, there's one scale in particular that I absolutely knew was correct. It had 6 levels. In 1995, I discovered a 7th level. And when I inserted that level into that scale, the scale manifested mathematically, meaning I saw that it had undeniably mathematical underpinnings
Yeah.
and phenomena. Now, then I said, well, wait a minute. This is more than I was even hoping for. I wonder how many of these other scales, 30 some odd scales, might actually be 7-level scales. And so,
Oh.
because I knew what I was looking for, I was able to find the remaining levels on all these other scales. And voila, in a couple of months, I had about 32 7-level scales. Now, as these scales presented themselves as 7-level scales, they all manifested mathematically. And so the more I observed them and studied them and tested them the more it became obvious that I was dealing with natural law, which is right up my alley because I'm an engineer. That's what engineers are interested in. So I was able to recognize this phenomena for what it was. And I wrote the first transcript of the book in 1995, and I gave it to colleagues of mine, all of whom were very brilliant men.
Right.
And right from day one, everybody was knocked out by this book. They all said, wow, this is amazing, something like that. The most common response I get is people say, this blew me away. I don't usually speak that way, but that's what people tell me. And then I started giving it to my clients and my friends, and the response was universally positive.
Yeah.
So, as an engineer, I researched this for 25 years because I knew this was big. And as an engineer, I was not going to release something unless I absolutely knew and could demonstrate and could explain that it was natural law, that it was unarguable. In other words, these scales are like the Pythagorean theorem. The Pythagorean theorem was true for billions of years before Pythagoras discovered it. And it will still be true after Earth is no longer here.
Yeah.
Okay? It's natural law. It's undeniable. If you study geometry, or really any kind of mathematics, the Pythagorean theorem is embedded in everything. There's no getting away from it. That is what these scales are like. And after I had the 32 7-level scales in 1995, I kept working with my clients, and these scales manifested over and over and over empirically. In other words, they presented themselves without my telling anybody what they were.
Okay.
In my work. So then I realized I have to work on this, and I spent 25 years perfecting this system, and finally had it published about a year ago.
Right. This is the book? Yeah.
Yes, that's the book.
Okay, cool. This is Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast. I am Dr. Canute White, talking with Jim Marshall. But you might not be able to see the book if you are not watching via our channel, Canute Media. But it's a very interesting book. You can where can we get this book, Jim?
The book is very easy to find. It's all over the place. I mean, you can get it from Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Author House, the publisher. If you just type the word Septemics into a search engine, you'll get hundreds of responses, including all the people who are selling the book. And I invite all of your listeners to go to my website, septemics.com, because then you will be able to see in great detail what this is about. You'll be able to see what readers have said about it, what people have written about it, what the reviews are like, and you'll even be able to read passages of the book. So go there, and there's a lot of data. Take as much time as you want, and then you can decide for yourself if you want to go this route. But I can tell you this, 100% of the people who've either read the book or discussed it with me have had a positive response.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question for you, Jim. Your work is very important, and I am looking at public administration as it relates to your work. I mean, I believe that many political administrations around the world are struggling to find the answers to many questions that they may have as it relates to public administration. How well can your theory, can your work fit into public administration and allowing governments around the world to do better?
All right, I'll give you a specific answer. But before I do, I just want to say one thing. You talked about my theory a minute ago. There is no theory. None of this is theoretical. This is empirical. I wasn't even looking for this. It presented itself to me over a period of years. And because of my polymathic background, I was able to recognize it. And then, as I said, I worked on it for 25 years to verify that it was exactly what I thought it was. And to express it in a way that would be understandable to the general public.
Right.
And with a book like this that has 87,000 words, it's a lot of work to write it in a way that the average person will be able to understand. So that took a lot of work. So I basically have gone from helping people by the hundreds to helping people by the millions via this book.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, in answer to your question about public administration, okay, first of all, I already know from direct observation that this book will significantly help anybody who reads this book, including people in government, including people in NGOs, including people in corporations. So it's universally applicable because it's based on natural law. But there are some skills that are going to be more easily adaptable to administration. For example, if you go to the group scales, you have to realize that there's 24 individual scales and 11 group scales. So in the group scales, there is a scale of government.
Okay.
You see? Now, everybody makes the mistake of breaking down government into the left and the right.
Right.
That's completely fictitious. There is no left or right. Now, people who study government, like myself, realize that it's kind of an analogy, and it goes back historically to specific, I believe it was the French government where that was first used based on where people sat in the House of Representatives. But it's completely misleading. There's no left or right. It's an up or down. And if you look at the scale, it shows you the scale of government from the highest to the lowest. And it explains why it's that way and how it works and how you can move up. Now, another one is the scale of civilization. This details the way in which civilizations develop. Now, when I say civilization, I'm not talking about society, because there are many societies that are not civilized.
Right, yeah.
In fact, I would go so far as to say, overall, there is no Earth civilization. There are many Earth societies, but this is not a civilized place. If you just look in the news, pay attention to what's going on, it's not civilized. However, there are subgroups that are civilized. So this tells you how civilizations develop, and it tells you the implications of this, which are very important. And it tells you how to assess the 7 levels of civilization and see the implications of it. And it holds up a mirror to anyone as to what societies are in a better shape than others. Now, there's also a scale of management.
Oh.
The scale of management is one of the few ones that I had 7 levels for before I discovered this subject. And it goes through the 7 levels of management, which are inescapably necessary. And it puts them in the right order. And it even cross-references it to another scale that's very important. To tell you how to deal with different types of people based on the scale of management. You see, there's a lot of mismanagement because people do not select for the group.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with very corrupt or very ignorant or very stupid people, you can't deal with them the same way as you would deal with people who are successful and intelligent and well-educated.
Right.
So, because the truth is that one size does not fit all.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so this tells you how to use your management in a way that fits the groups. Now, there's also a scale of politics.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay? So this tells you how to analyze different political situations. That is a quite different scale from all the others. Now, the other thing I want to say is this.
Yeah.
These 35 scales, each scale is unique. You cannot learn much about scale A by studying scale B.
Okay.
In most cases, you can't learn anything about scale C by studying scale D. And if you think about it, This subject spans the spectrum of human experience because the scales are unique. In other words, human phenomena covers a tremendous ground. It's broad. And in order to cover all of it, you would need scales that are completely unlike one another.
Mm-hmm.
Also, another thing you have to realize that some of these scales are general and some of them are specific. The ones who are specific work in relation to a specific context. For example,
Yeah.
you have the scale of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There are 7 basic motivations, and all the other apparent motivations are subsets of these 7 motivations. Now,
Yeah.
if you can determine a person's motivation, that tells you an enormous amount. And of course, you have to, determining it, you can't just accept what the person tells you.
Yeah.
You have to observe and study and
Definitely.
vet the person. Observe the person over a period of time. Look at the person's policies and actions. How do they actually behave?
Mm-hmm.
So when you use that scale, you could say, well, not only can you find your own motivation,
Yeah.
but your own motivation relative to things. For example, you could have one motivation toward your spouse, another motivation toward your son, another motivation
Yeah.
toward your landlord, you see, another
Mm.
motivation toward your boss. And so this clarifies where you are in regard to all these different things. And also, you can find the motivation of many different people. In other words, what is your boss's motivation? What is your best friend's motivation? You see? What is a political person's motivation?
Yeah.
And when you understand that, that really tells you a lot about that person. For example, the lowest motivation of all of them is revenge.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That is an inherently destructive motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the rhetoric of Hitler,
Yeah.
he clearly was motivated by revenge.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted revenge on the Jews because he blamed them for all the problems in Germany. Now, part of the reason why he did that is because many of the Jews, if not most, were communists. And many of the communists, if not most, were Jews, you
Yeah.
see. And so he wanted revenge against the communists.
Mm-hmm.
So these two things sort of melded. Now, if the German people saw that he was motivated by revenge instead of one of the higher motivations, they would have said, we don't want to get mixed up with this guy. And he
Yeah.
wouldn't have gotten as many votes as he did in 1933 when the Nazi Party got 37% of the electorate. Now,
Mm-hmm.
he would have gotten some votes. You know who would have voted for him? Criminals,
Okay.
psychopaths, sociopaths, crazy people, or anti-Semites, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, he would have gotten some votes. But that's not enough to get 37%.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
see?
Jim, I'm a very critical thinker. I really criticize academics, right? I had that sort of a hallmark with me from university. I never believe everything that the book is saying, that the textbook is saying. I'm very critical. My thing though, do you think that people are inherently selfish or self-sustaining? In my mind, I would want to say that many people that we see as being selfish, they're really self-sustaining. What's your view on that? Because many persons are not necessarily selfish, they're really trying to sustain self in order to give more. That's just philosophical. I just want you to share your views on it.
I'm not sure I understand your question. What is it you're really trying to find
Okay,
out?
there are persons who we believe that are selfish,
Yes.
but in fact, in my belief, they're not selfish, they're self-sustaining. They just
I,
want to sustain self. What's
okay.
your views on that?
Okay.
What's your
Yes.
opinion on
Okay.
that?
Good. Good. So this is a semantic problem. You
Yeah.
have to decide what you mean by selfish.
Okay.
In other words, criminals are selfish. That's why they're criminals.
Yeah.
Now, criminals don't necessarily want to kill people, but they will if you get in their way because they're selfish. They will take your money, all right? So they are selfish. But there are other people who are taking care of themselves, which are not really bad people. They're just, you might say they are self-reliant,
Okay.
okay? Like in the writings of Ayn Rand, she talks about people like that, people who are self-reliant, people who they don't want anything from anybody else. They're doing their own thing. They don't want to be held back by the government. They don't want to harm anybody, but they're going to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
Okay, so I would say they're self-reliant, which is a good thing, and they're selfish, which is a bad thing. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. You did. I mean, your views on it, your views are cool, right? But tell me, why do many people hate working with numbers? Numbers are the mathematics, figures. Many people basically afraid of numbers, of figures. What's going on there in many of the school systems around the world? Students are failing maths.
Right. Okay.
What do you think?
Okay, so there is a scale of scholarship. There are 7 levels of scholarship. And in that chapter, I explain what makes a person a bad scholar or a poor scholar, and how to make the person a better scholar. And again, this is something that I've been working with my whole life. I started school at the age of 3, and I have been involved in teaching and learning ever since. So I had a massive amount of experience at tutoring people, teaching people, and also my own experiences with scholarship, which are extensive. And so I learned a lot about how to make a better scholar. Now, if you read that chapter, it'll go into those details. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but
Okay.
mathematics is like any other subject. It has to be taught in a certain way. And if it's taught wrongly, people are not going to get it. So this goes again to, you have to figure out what level of scholarship is this person at, and teach the person at that level. You follow me?
Yeah, I'm following.
So there, for example, I found in my work, I would often run into the problem of people not understanding the meanings of words.
Yeah.
So this, of course, is a barrier. You have to clear that up, or they're not going to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So now, one of the things that's not widely known is even people with graduate degrees, even people with doctorates, are not necessarily highly literate.
Yeah.
In other words, if you talk to the average scientist, engineer, mathematician, he will know his subject well. But if you try to talk about other subjects, they're usually ignorant.
Yeah.
They don't. You can't talk to them about Dostoevsky, or existentialism, or Plato. Okay, they don't know about that. So I'll tell you a story. I had a friend who was a medical doctor.
Yeah.
A very successful doctor. He had a big practice, was highly thought of, with good reason. Was very successful. And just socially, I had read a novel that I liked, and I gave this person the novel and said, hey, this is a really good book. Here, read it. So I see the person a week or two later, and she said to me, and I quote, I cannot read this book. Now, you would think somebody like that, a successful doctor, would be able to read a popular novel. This is one of the most famous and popular novels in the world. I don't want to go into the specifics of it, but millions of people have read this book, okay? So this is a book that I know people who never went to college who read this book, but she could not read it.
Yeah.
So that tells you that her level of literacy, there is a scale of literacy. Most people think in terms of literate or illiterate, okay? That's a binary choice.
Okay. Right.
7 levels of literacy. And if you don't get the person at the proper level of literacy, you will not be successful in working with him.
Yeah.
So as a human development engineer, this is something I would figure out quickly. There are some people, and again, I'm talking about successful people. I didn't work with people who were mentally deficient,
Right.
or unsuccessful. They couldn't afford me anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So I've found people, very successful people, who I had to spend a lot of time with them going through dictionaries and explaining things and getting them to use dictionaries, because that is not something that is stressed enough in our schools.
Yeah.
Also, I found you have to have the right level of dictionary.
Okay.
I had one client of mine, I was using a Webster's Unabridged dictionary. It weighed about 20 pounds, okay? That was over his head. I didn't know this was a new client. After a while, I came to see this guy needed a simpler dictionary. For example, Thorndike Barnhart has a beginner's dictionary, an intermediate dictionary, and an advanced dictionary, which is excellent, okay? And, many people need to use, if not an intermediate dictionary, maybe even a beginner's dictionary.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about people whose first language is English.
Yeah.
I've worked with clients whose first language was another language, okay? And so when I was working with them, I would have to stop and explain what the word meant, because getting them into a dictionary is going to be too hard for them.
Yeah.
But the point is that learning math is like learning anything else. Math is a language. It's just like learning Spanish or French or Chinese, okay? You have to have the right gradient. Now, good teachers, good counselors, good facilitators know about gradients.
Yeah.
They will teach it at a level that is appropriate. Now, I worked as a tutor for many years, working with individuals. And as a tutor, I could tailor the lesson to that person. I call this person-centered tutoring,
Right.
person-centered education. Because to me, I wasn't teaching in a classroom. In fact, one of the things that I explain in my book is that this whole idea of teaching people in classes doesn't work. Okay, now there are specific contexts where it works. If you're going to have a laboratory demonstration, okay, you can do that in a class. Or if a guy's going to get up and give a lecture on physics
Yeah.
to a class of 300 physics students, okay, that might work. But beyond that, most of the time, it should be one-on-one. Now, with the technology we now have, with the internet, with the proliferation of digital technology, there is no need to put people in a class. The reason they still put people in a class is because they're indoctrinating them. Okay?
Yeah.
There is no mainstream education system. There is a school system. But the two things that actually, there's three things that happen in the education system, the so-called education system. One is job training. They teach people how to do jobs. Okay, whatever it is. That's fine.
Okay.
That's not education, though. That's job training. Now, another thing is indoctrination. They're teaching you have to think this way. If you don't think this way, you're not graduating. And that has been going on for a generation now.
Yeah.
And it's a catastrophe. Now, the other thing is, it's a way for the powerful people, the elites, so-called,
Yeah.
to keep everything to themselves. So like, for example, George Bush Sr. Went to Yale, okay? And because of that, he was a rich man, he gave the money. His son was admitted to Yale, okay? That goes on all the time, where rich and powerful people get their children into elite schools so that they will have after their name Harvard graduate or whatever.
Yeah.
And in fact, those schools, I don't know if you've heard about this, but they have been dumbing their curricula down for years.
Okay.
The people who get into them are people who are not necessarily brilliant people. They're there because their father is a millionaire or a billionaire
Yeah.
or president of the United States or something. Okay, so it's a control factor. Okay, there was a period, I think this has changed now, but it might still be true, where every single judge of the Supreme Court, justice of the Supreme Court, graduated either from Harvard or Yale.
Yeah.
All of them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So that's a control system. Those are the three things that keeping classes helps. It does not help educate people. It helps educate people is to get the student to go at his own level. Now, this goes to an extreme degree. I can tell you as a tutor, because you'll find a guy, let's say you have a guy, I've tutored math, okay?
Right.
You have a guy who's good in math, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets into, let's say, analytical geometry. He's having a little trouble, so they bring me in.
Yeah.
Now, so we're not talking about somebody who doesn't like math, or he just is something about it he's not getting. And I would have to come in sort of like a detective to figure out what he didn't get, okay?
Yeah.
And get him and explain it, okay? That's different from somebody who's really not good at math. So you have to have the right approach. And our education system absolutely does not. And again, it's not really an education system. Now, there are some schools that are educational in the true sense of the word. Educate comes from the Latin word educare, which means to lead out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you truly educate somebody, it has a profound effect on him. It changes who he is, how he thinks, what his values are. Okay, that's different from job training or indoctrination or a control system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's going to take a while to get that to break down.
Yeah.
I'm sure you know there is a burgeoning homeschooling system where a lot of people will not send their kids to the schools.
Yeah.
They will keep them home and teach them themselves.
Homeschooling, right? And again,
because they understand this.
Yeah, and I would like to have your views on that, because homeschooling most times means that the social development of the child is lacking there, will be lacking because of the home.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
The parent has to know that and keep that in mind, and has to get the kid to join groups.
Right.
You know, there are all kinds of groups. If they're Christians, he can join the Christian club. There are all kinds of Christian clubs for Christians. Or he can get them to join the 4-H. You know, he can get them to join all kinds of things. And in fact, homeschooling has gotten to the point now where there are homeschooling groups, homeschooling, but you can go online and connect with other homeschoolers. So it's becoming kind of a subculture now. In fact, in recent years, most of the universities have figured out that most of the homeschooled students are better than the average public school students.
Yeah.
And so I have direct
That's empirical.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yes. There are schools now. When before, like 30 years ago, homeschooling, the colleges didn't want to deal with it. But now, especially in the better schools, which are populated by a smarter faculty, they know about this. And so when they get a kid who comes, I happen to know somebody who was homeschooled who scored in the top 1% on 2 of the 3 SAT sections. Wow. Okay. So that person went to an elite school. Okay. And the 3rd section was not bad either. So these people at the school were very smart, and so they accepted this person, and the person did fine and graduated. So that's happening.
Yeah,
it's going to happen.
Jim, I want your opinion and 2 concepts before we wrap up. But this is Canute Exploration, your topic in a podcast. I'm Dr. Canute White, talking to Jim Marshall. You notice I allow you to talk because some very interesting things that you are saying, and I'm really learning a lot from it, and I'm sure that my audience will learn a lot. But human sexuality is one of the two things that I'd like you to touch on. Give me your opinion on human sexuality.
There is a scale of sexuality.
Yeah.
It is a whole new concept. Because if you have people, even if they like one another, if they're not compatible on that scale, a romantic relationship is not going to work. You have to have, it doesn't mean you have to both be at the same level, but you have to be at compatible levels. Also, there is a scale of allegiance. The scale of allegiance is one of the most important concepts that humans can have, because when relationships deteriorate, it means the person is going down the scale of allegiance. And again, there are 7 levels.
Yeah.
So if any type of relationship, not just romantic, any
Yeah.
type of relationship, if it's decaying, like let's say a parent and a child, okay, that is because the allegiance is decaying. And if you can find the level that the person is at, you can then improve him by getting him up to a higher level.
Okay.
So let me just say a little bit about Septemics, okay, to give your viewers just a general idea, because I don't want to be mystified. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to human beings occur in a sequence of 7 levels.
Yeah.
Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. I wrote this book to help people. Each of these 35 scales provides the user with an infallible way of determining the salutariness or beneficialness of any group, individual, or activity.
Yeah.
If the group, individual, or activity moves persons or groups up these scales, it's beneficial or positive. If it moves them down, it's detrimental or negative. Moreover, just finding out what level you or another person or some group is at is by itself enlightening and beneficial. And
Yeah.
finally, once you know the actual level of a person or group, you can improve that person or group by moving them up one level at a time. All of these advantages represent major steps forward for society. Each of these scales is an axis against which to evaluate human behavior. Combined, they empower one to understand, predict, and manage human affairs to a degree hitherto unattainable by most.
Right. Do you think that love decreases though, Jim? Um, well, what I'm asking is that there are times when two people fall in love. As psychologists, we know that there has to be something interesting that one party saw in the other party, and
Yes.
that kind of create that spark and so on. But do you think that this decreases over time? And do you have any idea why this decreases? Well, we're trying to help persons in relationship, because
Right.
you would have known, based on your work, that many persons are having challenges in relationship, right?
Right. First of all, there is a scale of relationships.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Right.
If you get that scale and study it, you will see there are 7 levels of relationships. That in itself can resolve your problem.
Yeah.
Plus, there is a scale of permeation. Now, most people don't know about permeation. Permeation is the basic action of a spiritual being. Okay? You are a spiritual being. And to the degree that you permeate something, there is love or affinity. And to the degree that you fail to permeate it or don't permeate it, there is hatred. Okay? Now, when you have 2 people who are deeply in love, they are permeating one another at a very high level. They are at or near the top of the scale of permeation. So, what you know right away, when you have a person who hates another person, he is not permeating him.
Okay.
If he did permeate him, there would be affinity. This is what Christianity talks about.
Yeah.
When they talk about love your neighbor, the word is really permeation.
Okay.
Because think about this. The reason that the being gets sensation from his body is because he's permeating the body. Okay, this is something that happens around the time of birth. Sometimes it's before birth, sometimes it's right after.
Yeah.
The being permeates the body. Now, when the being dies, he withdraws that permeation. That is
Yeah.
what death is. It is a complete withdrawal of the permeation of the being from the body, and the body dies.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
of course you get no sensation from the body because you're not permeating it anymore.
Yeah.
Now, there are many people who've had out of body experiences where they
Mm-hmm.
went some traumatic event like a car accident. They
Mm-hmm.
left the body, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and when they left the body, they had no sensation from the body.
Yeah.
Now, instead of simply dying, sometimes the person will come back and
Okay.
they will all tell the same story. When the person comes back into the body, meaning they permeate it again, then they get all the pain because the
Mm.
permeation connects them to the pain.
Yeah.
See? So permeation is again, that's something that people need this scale to
Yeah.
see where are you on this level. It's
Mm-hmm.
very specific. All of these scales are very specific and they're
Okay.
all explained very clearly.
Yeah. Interesting. Interesting. So, how can we contact you? Could you give us your contact number again? Well, not
Sure.
number, email,
Well,
website.
let me say this.
Mhm.
I invite your listeners to go to my website, septemics.com. My contact information is on the website, and
Okay.
you can send me an email.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're there, you can look at all the information about Septemics and find out, get some data on what it's really about. But I can tell you, I already know that this book will help anyone who wants to
Yeah.
improve himself or his life.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely, Jim. That's what we're about on Canute Exploration. Your topic in the podcast. Almost 2 years now, and we're helping as much as possible, empowering and inspiring others. Nice to have you, Jim. Nice to have you
Thank you,
on Canute
Doctor. I
Exploration.
appreciate it.
Thank you. So this was Jim talking to us, right? And he has a lot to offer. Go to his website now and see what's going on there. Contact him and have a chat with him as best as possible. He will try to help you and purchase the book. Right, the book you will see on the website as well. And go ahead and look at those scales, and I'm sure your life will be changed. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Canute Exploration, your topic in the podcast.